Welcome to Born to be Brave today. Oh my gosh, you guys, I'm beyond excited for you guys to meet Mel Palmer. Hi, welcome to the show, Mel.
Hello, thanks, Colleen, for having me.
Yeah, it's so fun. I ran into Mel at Squat Up Summit and I'm like, you have to be on my show. And so we just booked it right there on the spot. And
Done.
here we are. So I'm going to just tell you two things I know about Mel. So when I first joined the group called Sub 2, which is a creative finance community, Mel ran this safety badge class, and I'm like, oh, I'm all about safety. Like, let me tell, because I've been a realtor for 20 years. So, like, I see people that are in the community when I go to the meetups, and they're talking about all these bad partnerships and the money they lost. And I'm like, didn't you do any due diligence? Like, of course, as a realtor, I'm like, man, I put on my I feel like I'm part private investigator, part realtor, and part therapist, right? I'm like three parts. And I'm like, they're new. And I'm not saying you can avoid all pitfalls, but anyway, tell me about your journey. And then I really want to get into, I have two questions that people wanted to know. And then I really want to get into where you're going next. But tell me about safety and why that was important and what happens to bad partnerships and stuff like that. Just a quick condensed.
Yeah, so my background is as a federal agent. So I was a special agent for 7 years. I did front company investigations, fraud investigations, and a lot of sexual assault ones. But my specialty was export enforcement. And so I came out to Monterey, California to learn Mandarin, and then I'd go out to Hong Kong and look at front companies that were circumventing US trade law. So that's my background. I always invested in real estate while I was in the military. We have a beautiful thing called the VA loan, right? And when I got into the creative finance group, I had a lot of cash, and it was encouraged that if you had money, you would loan your money or get into capital partnerships with the OGs and the people that are doing all the big deals. And there
What's
were a
the
couple.
OG stand for just for our newbies? What is it?
Great question. What is it like? Original G's?
Uh,
Original gangsters.
oh,
Yes, yes.
that's what it is. Yeah, you're right. Okay.
So we got had some original gangsters allegedly, right? But turns out I had significantly more experience in real estate than they did. Just because
Yeah,
someone's all, yeah. You were a realtor for 20 years, right?
shocking. Oh, you don't
Yeah,
need that pre-approval letter, that credit score. Yeah, I do.
actually, I do. Yeah, so I got into a partnership just like you were talking about with some people that were recommended that were doing big deals, and it didn't take long for me to realize it was all part Ponzi scheme, part, a ding dong with a dream, right? Somebody thought
Smoke
they were
and
gonna.
mirrors.
Yeah. So there were three parts to this. One part was a joint venture, one part was a loan, and one part was a um LP in a boutique hotel, which I have a funny story of how that's gone along if we have time. But the loan was a Ponzi scheme, straight up just robbing Peter to pay Paul. That went completely unsecured to a property that they lost in foreclosure. It was a sub two, so they ruined a seller's life. They ruined a lender that was on that property. I was allegedly on that property. I think they had like four different loans, if you will, that were unsecured to this
Ooh,
property that was underwater, right? So total, and they just pocketed the cash, right?
of
Um,
course.
and so I realized really quickly into this that it was all a sham, but the money was already gone. So what do you do at that point? And I think that's where it's a choice, right? That's what we have that opportunity to do something or do what everybody else does when they lose money, which is lick their wound, maybe hide, get mad, maybe quit, right? And so for me, I was like, well, I'm in a position where I have the experience, education, resources to do something about this. I was blown away that there wasn't a due diligence firm in the industry. I thought I got to be able to hire someone, and I could just find PIs. And I'm like, well, PI can't do anything I can't do. I was a special agent. So for me, I was like, well, PI can't underwrite, a PI can't vet a deal. They can't do all these other things. I can mesh these two skill sets that I have and I can come up with something that's actually helpful, because the first thing that people ask when you lose money is, did you do your due diligence? And it's like, what is due diligence? Let's talk about the scope here, because due diligence for a traditional purchase is an appraisal, a credit score, and maybe an inspection, the end.
Mhm.
So when you're talking creative structures, underwriting, that's also the first question. Instead of did you do your due diligence, if you were to ask somebody the second layer of that question, well, how would I do that? They go, did you underwrite it? Well, for a loan, I don't care about cash flow. Comping is more important than underwriting if we're gonna split hairs here. But also it's comping, it's underwriting, it's the deal structure, it's the timeline, it's the returns, it's the proof of performance. Now we're gonna get into the person. I want to know their background, education, and experience. And so I realized, nah, that's that's not sufficient. So that's the long story. Short story is I got ripped off.
That money was gone. The ship
Yeah.
had sailed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then what's interesting is you started teaching people about how to fix that, right? And the thing that I think is interesting is one person said if someone scammed you and then they seem legit now, are once a scammer, always a scammer. What's your thoughts on that? Just really quick, so we answer our two questions people asked.
I believe in redemption, but
Hmm.
there's proof of performance, right? And
Hmm.
also, are we acknowledging? Are we making do? Like, are you making good on your previous agreements? Or are you just sweeping them under the rug and saying that was old me, this is new me? So I do believe in redemption, but I do believe there are some steps in order to receive it.
Yeah, right. No kidding. And then the last other question that somebody asked, because I like to ask the ones that people want, is to know is that they said that you talk a lot about how to protect the lender, right? The person loaning the money. He said, what about protecting the person that's borrowing it? But I don't know. Like, I guess I think you just need to have clear, intentional, and very clear JV agreements and who's doing what, not just like, oh, we're JVing and I met you at this thing and you're really great. But I think it needs to be outlined. What do you think?
Yeah, it most certainly needs to be outlined. I mean, at this point, um, I'm trying to think of how to say this and not be harsh, but like at this
Be
point,
harsh.
okay. Um, at this point, they're manufacturing their own victimization.
Mhm.
Like unless they have a specific example for me in which a borrower got screwed, those aren't reported to me. When I hear a borrower got screwed and then they tell me a story, it's a story of a lender pulling out before a deal funds. And it's like, maybe, maybe it wasn't a deal, most
Mhm.
likely, right? And
Mhm.
so let's just say it's the perfect deal. Let's just say it is. Are we ever entitled to somebody else's money? Like, the performance end of the agreement is funding, but the prerequisite to funding is that you have a legitimate deal. And so if you didn't provide sufficient documentation to make that lender feel comfortable with funding this loan, that seems like a you problem, not a them problem. It's
Okay,
like,
yeah, I like it. We keep it real here on Born to Be Brave. So
yeah,
yeah.
and I do think, at the end of the day, there are some new lenders. There are new lenders that have no idea what to ask for. So not only did the borrower not provide it, but also they never asked. So I think it's knowing what to provide to make people understand what a good deal is. Because if you're dealing with a new lender, I just say don't deal with new lenders then. But sometimes those are the only people willing to look at your deal. And so in that case, it's on you to provide more information in a very clear format so that they can fund on time and feel comfortable.
Yeah. And one last question just about funding and stuff. Hold on, let me just look at my thing here. But I was thinking about in like partnerships and networking because I just listened to a whole bunch of your stuff online. And I was like, I love how you when you're networking and how we can avoid shiny object syndrome, because once you get into the real estate investing space, there's all these different options of investing in real estate, right? Um, why is intentionality and like if you are going to lend or have a partnership, why is it important to find out what the strengths are of that person, like the Clifton strengths and the like making intentionality. Like I even just had John send me my Clifton strengths because I did it a long time ago, and I was like, that is just the craziest thing, right? And then because a big thought leader, I went to a small retreat with them, and they had us do it before we came, but then they never even talked about it while we were together, for the 3 days, which is interesting. I didn't even know I did it until I went to go sign up with somebody else, right? I went to go sign up with Bridget, and it says you already took it, and I'm like, well, that's impossible. I never took this test. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I did.
When did you take it?
I took it right before my foot surgery, like 3, 4 years ago.
Huh. With like work? Like your broker?
So I went to Susie Holman, had this thing called Susie School. She's awesome. In fact, she said she'll be on my show. And it's so cute. And what happened is and she's retired now and is a stay-at-home mom now. And she went on this journey and she made like, I don't know, 5 million, $4 or $5 million in a small amount of period. But anyway, she used to host these things, but she would handpick. But my daughter says, oh, you need to go to her thing. She's opening it up to whoever the first 12 people are to pay to go. And you don't have to fill out the application. Because they were all young moms like her, right? Like I'm older, I'm a grandma. And so I never got to go. And so I literally was on a plane flying somewhere, and I'm just like, God said, you should do it. So I just did it. Right. And I've become friends with her. I just love her. But I didn't know I had done that because she was in transition herself because she had usually taught people how to make money on online. And she had gone more woo woo and mindset and everything, which is great. That's more I am anyway. And anyway, so we didn't really talk about that other stuff because she decided to shift, before we got there, which is all good. But I didn't know I'd taken it, right? And so then when Bridget said, Colleen, you have to take this test, I'm like, okay, because Bridget and I were accountability partners. When we first both got into sub two, we joined right at about the same time. And so she's like, oh, you got to take this test. I'm like, great, send it over to me, right? And so she sent it over to me, but it says, oh, you already took it, like when I logged in.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people take that stuff, they look at it once and then they table it.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm definitely in that camp. I took it, I dissected it for about a week and then I think I tabled it, but I I brought it up for I had some informed investor students and we start with you, right? Your strengths, your skills, your goals, your values. And to your question, like about starting with intentionality with these partnerships, I think it's really clear to get clear on you because when you're part of an organization, you're assigned values. You're
Yeah.
assigned a mission. But when you are constructing your own life, it's like, life by design, your business by design. And really, if you're constructing your business, you're constructing a massive part of your life. Um, why wouldn't you do that aligned with your goals and your values and, some intentionality? Because the thing that we're assigned when we can act like a job's not a choice. We can act like, oh, well, I can't leave, but that's a mindset. That's a choice,
Mhm.
right? But at the same time, I understand that choice. And so when you're in those circumstances where you don't necessarily get to control the values in which a different organization lives by or what your supervisor or manager or boss um live by, even if it doesn't actually match the organizational goals. You're subjected to those people as a part of a pretty large part of your life. And so then if we go back to, hey, you're building your own business, you're designing this, you're choosing who you get to be around and who gets to be around you. To me, like this is an opportunity to make something that you love because if you're doing it for the money, don't get me wrong. I don't think people are doing this for free. And whether or not you're doing this to help people, you're not doing it to not make money. But that's that should be the product. That should be the output. The input, I think, should be some love. The input should be some intentionality. And then the byproduct is the money.
Yeah. And I've been asking myself, I've gone to quite a few high level mastermind type things or coaching things. And one of my coaches said she asks herself, and we should be asking ourselves frequently, what would I love? What would I love? What would I love? And I'm like, ooh, right? How many of us are asking ourselves, what would I love?
Right. Most of us are asking ourselves, what would I tolerate?
Mm-hmm.
What can I handle? Not what would I love? I love that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what would I love? And so literally, like I've been in sub two for 2 years, right? And I bought it the house I'm sitting in. My husband, we bought this house, creative subject to. And so it's a second home because we're from California. But and then I invested in the sub two fund, but I have literally not up until now figured out like what would I love to do next in this space, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
so and I do watch a lot of people lose money and or worse than losing money, they're wrapped up for 2 years in these really bad partnerships that they can't get out of. Have you experienced that?
Oh yeah, I'm still so that boutique hotel that I'm a part of, they're
Uh-huh.
now doing a 1.2 million capital call. And I'm like, that's interesting. You've never given me a quarterly statement of progress, and I invested in October 2022. So now you're doing a capital call on this project that is in should have refinanced this month. Oh, but now you're saying there's 6 months before it's even completed, and then it's got a season before it can refinance. So, yeah, I mean, October 2022 is when I got into this joint venture, the lending Ponzi scheme, and then the LP and the boutique hotel. And on the 27th, every month when payments due, I get to start the conversation of, hello, checking in.
Are you going to pay me this month? Is that
Hi. You don't even make your monthly payments, much less the balloons, much less the, performance and everything else. I took over two assets from our partnership, properties that were under construction that had not been touched. In fact, were in worse condition than we purchased them in. So I
Oh.
took those two dumpsters over, had to sell one at half the price it was purchased for, sell and put another 40K into one that now I'm renting out. And so it's like, yeah, these things it doesn't take long to get the yarn ball tangled, but to
I love
untangle it,
that.
yeah, years.
Right?
But, I can say I've transformed this into a lesson for others, a service for others, and at the end of the day, a way for myself to know that that ain't it. Like I'm
Mm.
fine. There's a lot more that I can handle, right? But I don't want
A
to
lot
handle
more.
things. I want to love it.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So you people can do passports through you, right? Like they can find out, you can underwrite and look at their deals and find out if they're legit as well as you could, right?
Yeah, so I have several services. I have
Hmm.
a diligence detective hour where we'll look at the paperwork, the structure. I'll pull records checks. We'll do the whole, on scene assessment, if you will. And then my passport is a proactive tool for people who don't have a deal yet, who are looking to partner transparently. Perhaps they're a new lender and people are afraid they're going to pull out of a deal, right? And so it's just making sure, hey, are you who you say you are? Do you have the experience and skill sets that you say you do? So we look at background, education, experience, assets, income, and credit, and then present their investor passport based on their goals, their values, their buy box or lend box, and then an opportunity to contact them. And so it's like a one-page site that's
Hmm.
hosted by me as a third party because anybody can put anything on a website. And so that way it's a third party verified CV, if you will. And so my website's capital verified. My business is capital verified, and you get your third party CV.
Yeah, so it's a third party endorsement. with
Exactly.
and there's been a bunch of due diligence by you to like certify that this person is who they say they are.
Exactly.
That's kind of what my investor hat, like when I put my investigative hat on, when I get an offer on a property, it's like, okay, well, do you really have the money in the bank? Do you really, is your other property really sold?
Right.
Like,
Especially when a lot of people are claiming to be a connector. And so I think that that can really mess up some borrowers sometimes when this person says they'll fund a deal and they don't even have the funds. They're allegedly connecting them, and then their lenders are actually not with them either. Or that communication chain just is not occurring. So people aren't comfortable and don't fund. So I guess that could kind of supplement some of my answers to your question earlier too.
yeah,
So
I
that's
love it.
a good way to like just verify people are who they say they are. If you're saying you're a lender, you're a lender. Or let's acknowledge that you're actually just a connector or a broker. You're not lending, you're lending other people's money.
Yeah, and there's a big difference.
There is, because
Hmm.
you can also be a lender with your own lines of credit, but
Hmm.
do not manufacture your position in this, situation, in this transaction, if you will.
Yeah, and then the problem is the other person doesn't know that they're, you know what I'm saying? They believe them and take them at face value, and then when things go south, then they don't even know who to get a hold of because they don't even have the information from the person who the money was, or vice versa, you know?
Exactly. So that's why I say don't trust, verify, right? Don't believe people, get the proof. And so many times I'll get on these calls with people. Yesterday I got on a call with somebody and they showed me this Excel spreadsheet. And I was like, I can make an Excel spreadsheet. Have you seen a single deed? Have you seen a single appraisal? Are they actually refinancing out of these, or are they just replacing it with another PML? Not saying that's wrong. You can do that, but do we have a single appraisal in this entire chain of events to show that anything's worth what they're claiming?
Yeah, and real banks do that. If you're going to be a bank, you might want to start asking for that stuff. Appraisals are pretty cheap. It's like an ounce of prevention is a pound of cure, right?
Exactly. I always talk about an ounce of prevention is worth hundreds of thousands of pounds of cure. Like,
Yeah,
if you're
right.
talking about lending, oh my goodness, guys, like prevention is the cure because it's so painful. It's so painful. And there's an ego hit. There's uh obviously a financial hit. When you're talking finances, you're talking stability of your family, right? Stability,
Hmm.
and it's just not worth gambling. If you want to gamble, go to Vegas. Like, but you're in
Yeah,
real estate to have asset-backed returns. Well, they're not asset-backed if you're not verifying them.
yeah. And let's talk. This is a good transition into mindset because when things go south, right? We were talking before the show for a minute, and then I'm like, wait, we got to talk about this on live because this is what I really love. In fact, I was thinking maybe I should be the my a mindset coach for people that are in real estate because I love that. I believe that. No, I don't believe it. I know with every fiber of my being that no matter what happens, whether you lost millions of dollars or $100,000, or if you got a divorce, or you have a kid with cancer, or a kid that lives in jail, or what a drug addict, or whatever these things are that I call them opportunities to grow, actually. I feel like pain is a very powerful teacher, and I've had a lot of painful what most people would never like. Everyone wants to be super positive, Colleen, and like miracles are my normal. Oh my gosh, oh, I love you so much. But actually, nobody wants to be the person that got to be this point, if that makes sense. Like nobody wants to, I had a kid with cancer. Nobody wants to have, go through that. Nobody wants to have, my son was a drug addict for 20 years. Nobody wants to do that. He was homeless and lived on the street and in and out of jail, like nobody wants to do that. There's a lot of chaos. John and I lost everything back in the early 90s, right? Because we were inexperienced and didn't know Jack's back, right? It was painful, right? Like instead of saving our money and shutting down the business, we just kept feeding our business. But that was so dumb, but we didn't know, right? But let me tell you today, well, I would never do that. And I'm so much, but those all those things were opportunities to grow. But I know a lot of people who give up and they're bitter, right? And they give up. So tell me, we were talking about this and you said you're going to be also expanding into another area. So tell me what's going on with you.
Yeah. So while you were talking, I grabbed this book, The Obstacle is the Way. It's Ryan
Uh-huh.
Holiday. He talks about that. So like you said, like the obstacle is the opportunity. But um, so like the last 2 years, I've been doing post-traumatic growth training for first responders. So I have been working intimately with them with, first responders specific struggle, but at the end of the day, first responders don't have a monopoly on struggle, right? You don't have a monopoly
Yes.
on trauma. And while it's who we usually think of as soon as
Hmm.
we talk about PTSD, we think about the war-torn soldier. Um, and I have been in the Air Force now for 18 years. I spent 12 years on active duty. And um, the reality is I don't know if you know this. Do you know who has the most like what demographic or incidents rather have the most PTSD?
Mhm.
Car accidents.
Oh, really?
Anybody can get in a car accident, right? Fire,
Hmm.
floods, like losing everything, right? And especially in the, I shouldn't say especially, but also in the investor world, you can lose it all. Like
All
put,
of it.
yeah,
Poof.
gambling
I've
a little too
watched,
much.
yeah, I met a couple more people this week that they've lost everything. And then
Yeah,
I've watched people who have actually been connectors and ripped people off, and then they're just gone from the community. I feel like some people just join so they can prey on people and steal money from people. So we have to, yeah, you have to be aware. And they're
yeah,
gone. Poof, they're gone now.
yeah. So, to your question of where this is going, I've been doing this for the last 2 years for first responders, but I realized in my own journey, I've experienced growth after loss, right? I've experienced a transformation, of my mindset based on my experience. And, nobody would choose the cancer, right? Nobody would
Mhm.
choose to lose a ton of money. I lost $230,000, right? You wouldn't choose that, but because of it, I have this opportunity for growth, right? And so, um, I realized there's a lot of people that are still here that haven't quit because for me, I was like, all I see is people just quit or get better. Well, there's a lot of better people. And to me, I think there's an opportunity for them to transform that pain and that struggle and that experience into something else. Just make it be that pain as an indicator that something's got to change, right? And so I came up with a beta program, the Resilient Investor, REI. And the
I love it.
yeah, and so it's funny because I just declared to myself, then I
Hmm.
declared to my email list and anybody who wanted to participate, and then I got some outreach for coming out to a women's nonprofit in Albuquerque, the Auntie Tilly Foundation. Somebody saw a little bit of the post-traumatic growth training I just gave a taster of during some of my safety training.
Hmm.
And he was like, I would like you to come out and speak. And I was like, this is exactly what I'm going for. So that's where I'd like to transition is into um, some of the mindset work, like you were talking about, essentially
Hmm.
to help transform our struggle into strength and make that a a skill, a
Yeah.
skill essentially that you need to have because it's not going to be the only time something bad happens, right? Um, whatever our worst day is our worst day so far.
So far, yeah. Let me tell you, another thing's coming. I call them seasons. Like when people say, "Oh, you've just had really bad luck," I'm like, actually, no. This is real life. Something's coming. Like if you've never, and plus, I don't even want to be friends with people. This is going to sound terrible. I do not even. I cannot believe I'm saying this. I don't want to be friends with you if you haven't been through some stuff because you have no depth to you. Because um literally I don't want to be with shallow people. I don't want to hang out with you. I don't our conversation, I have zero tolerance for shallow people now. Zero. Yeah, zero.
And when I separated from the military, I had such a hard time connecting to people because I was like, you want to bitch about this?
Mm-hmm.
This? Like, you want to know what is
Mm-hmm.
happening in the world right now that I've seen with my own fucking eyes? Like,
Yes,
oh my God.
literally. Do you know what I said to someone the other day that was complaining? I said, well, at least your kid's not dying of cancer. Not to be mean, but I was just listening to him. I'm like, at least you're not dying of cancer. Your kid's not dying of cancer.
Yeah, and I think that's the struggle that a lot of people have with the PTG versus the PTSD is
Mhm.
then it's toxic positivity. And
Yes.
it can be weaponized, right? And maybe in that moment you were weaponizing it, and I'm gonna say they probably deserved it. But
But I didn't hold space for them in that moment. Do you know what I'm saying?
right, right.
Yes,
And
which
so
is the kinder thing to do.
totally. And so Edith Eger, are you familiar with her?
Mm,
She wrote a book called The Choice, and she was
I'm
a
writing it down.
psychologist who experienced Auschwitz herself and
Oh.
lost her whole family and her whole life in her childhood to Auschwitz and
Mm-hmm.
the demons that were there, right? And
Mm-hmm.
she was pretty young, and so she had to live her whole life thereafter. In fact, she's still alive today. And she was a psychotherapist and the space that she had to hold for other people who have not gone through Auschwitz.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And a woman who had a anxiety attack and mental breakdown because of her child with cancer, and
Mm-hmm.
losing her job and the pile on that happened after that, versus the woman who had a psychotic episode and breakdown because somebody cut them off in her Mercedes on the highway, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
holding space for people because at our core, we are experiencing the same emotions, even if on the outside you want to slap one person and coddle the other, right? And so I think that's the hard part about going through difficult things is on one hand it can give you extreme empathy for others who are also dealing with hard things, but on the other hand I think it just puts things into perspective where it's kind of like dealing with a child. Even if you're dealing with another adult, you see a child going through it over something that's so simple, but you're an adult and you've got all this depth and breadth and wisdom because you've seen this 100 times, right? But it's the first time they're going through it. And so the adult in the room is seeing that this is not a big deal, but you still have to hold space for them. And I think sometimes it's hard to be that to another adult.
Yes, and I actually believe at this point in my life, all pain is the same. The person that had the nervous breakdown over the Mercedes breaking down or whatever happened to her versus the one that lost their kid to cancer, to that person, I know most people won't agree with this, but to that person in that moment, it's the same. And so I think that I used to believe that there were different degrees of pain. This was a long time ago. And I actually now believe that everybody, and I don't know if there's data to back this up, but I actually believe that that pain, like what you were saying, like the kid that's experiencing the tantrum or upset about something, that you're like, oh, it's no big deal, but it's a really big deal to that person in that moment in time. Same with those that other person. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's it really is. It's real to that person. Like that is their real true life experience. And I think that the cool thing is to hold space for that person no matter where they are in the journey, because comparison is the thief of joy, but it's also the thief of empathy, right? Because it really makes it so we can't relate and hold space. And really, this is, I didn't plan on going into all this, but anyway, I really believe my real purpose in life is for every person that comes in contact with Colleen Lowe feels God's love for them through their interaction with me, whether or not we ever talk about God, whether they believe in God, no matter what it is, but that our interaction together, they just feel love, warmth. I call it scattering sunshine. I just want them to feel it no matter what. That's like that's my overall all or arching goal. Do you know what I'm saying?
I
I don't know.
do. Yeah.
Mhm.
That was my morning affirmation for a little bit. Um, excuse my French. I'll skip over the French part, but mine was I'm a ray of sunshine. I'm a
Uh-huh.
blazing ray of sunshine. So that's what I
I love that affirmation, right?
yeah, so that was it for a little bit where I was just feeling really heavy and like a lot of people were putting all their pain and frustration and loss on me and I think that's the thing too is when you're this beacon of light, you kind of
Mhm.
attract a lot of the darkness and people that you know maybe want to just commiserate with you and I'm like no I don't want to talk about that. I'd like to talk about what's the path forward, what has this shown you, but sometimes people aren't, they're kind of stuck looking behind and in the past and they don't want to look forward and so um that's hard too because you want to hold that space but I think there's a limit to, you have to want to grow too. And I can't force you to grow, and you might be growing in your own way, but at some point, like the sunshine needs to shine on others if you can't, you know.
Shine too once in a while. Yeah. If you can't, well, because when the sun shines out, like if growth, like if you look at a seed, right? It needs nourishment, it needs sunlight, it needs fertilizer, and it needs water, right? Like it needs
Yeah,
all of those things.
yeah,
And so if you're not willing to do those other aspects, the bright sun isn't going to help it. It's just going to die.
yeah, yeah,
And,
it'll fry it.
and it will fry it. That's so good, right? It will fry it. And you know what's interesting is I learned this from another coach. I've had a lot of coaches in my life. And she said you can have a 5 minute pity party for anything, Colleen, but then you're going to bury it and you're going to move on from it. And I know I was pretty harsh with my kids because I had a 5 minute pity party. I started a timer. And okay, like go ahead. Let me hear how awful it is. When they were older, not when they're young, because I didn't hear about this. And I think, of course, growth is important because you're either moving backwards or forwards. But the problem with sitting and complaining is we're all magnets. And so if you sit there very long, and I don't believe we should force everything down inside of us. I do think it's really important to get it out. Okay. It is so important. I think that's toxic to keep it in and it
Totally.
causes dis-ease in our body. Right.
Yep.
But we got to get it out. But then we got to move on. Yeah. You got to move on.
Yeah. And I think, grief comes in waves and you can
Mhm.
grieve many things. You can grieve the loss of an identity, um, the shift of there's so many different ways we think of death as grief, but there's so many other things that we grieve and then we just shove it down. We act like it's not worth acknowledging. And then it comes up in other toxic ways in our life or in our limiting beliefs or in our decisions. And so, like you said, I think it is important to get out, but it's important to corral. like,
Mhm. Yes,
you know,
that's good word.
and if you want to corral that with your journaling, you know,
Mhm.
anything negative you write down, you should write three positive things because we are inclined to we'll do this exercise in the training that I facilitate. It's a 5-day training. Um, and we'll talk about the negative influences in policing culture. Oh, the list. And then we talk about the positive influences, and it's like this long. I mean, this other one is just like we have to go to a new board, which is all
Yeah.
right. We got it, right? And then you start ticking alongside things that people are repeating, and you're like, all right, yeah, we're doing great. Okay, let's talk about the positive.
Mhm.
Crickets. so so I do think to counter that pre-wiring that we have in our brains, 80% of our thoughts are negative. Why? Because we are looking for prey, we're looking for danger, we're trying to be safe. And so then to top it off, 80% of our thoughts are negative and we recycle our thoughts at a 95% rate. So you are just swirling in the toilet. And at that point, I think it's important to help yourself reprogram that natural setting that we have and make sure to write down the positive threefold, fourfold, because we're preconditioned to be negative, and that's a National Science Foundation statistic. 80% of our thoughts are negative, and we recycle it at a 95% rate. And so that's why gratitude's important. That's why affirmations are important. That's why your mindset's so important, because it is easy to be negative. That's not
Not
a choice,
Yeah,
right?
it's just automatically happening. I remember the first time I read a book that said I follow Byron Katie, and I've done read all her stuff, and I'm like, wait a minute, my thoughts don't just happen; those automatic negative thoughts. Because Dr. Amen talks about automatic negative thoughts,
Ants,
and
yeah.
and then literally, I'm like, oh, I can question some of those thoughts. I can dissect that and pick that apart. And I think that people don't realize that this is crucial if you want to live a life you love. If that's a goal, like if you don't want to live the same day over and over and over again every day for the rest of your life, right? Because I feel like most people just get up and live the same day. My day is different every day. Do you know what I'm saying? Like there are no 2 days the same, right? But the majority of people, and if you're somebody that's like a W-2 and you want to transition into being, a real have passive income or start a side hustle or whatever it is, you have to be intentional, right? And you can't your thoughts are running your life,
Yeah.
and you have to get it under control.
Yeah. Who's running your thoughts? Because your thoughts
Yeah.
are running your life. Right. And that's where it's like, are you living your life? Is your life living you? Like,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, I wonder, when I first started doing that, I would pick one thing I was grateful for every day. One thing. I'd be like, and it had to be real. Like it can't be like, oh, I'm grateful for some, I mean, it's like, oh, I'm grateful for
For
my warm fuzzy
coffee.
socks. Yeah,
Yeah.
coffee, right? Something that brings you real joy. Because if you're in a what I would call a difficult situation, you gotta like reach for the joy, right? Like
Yeah.
anyway, and then so a negative thought would come in, and I'm like, oh, I love my coffee or my warm fuzzy socks or whatever it is, right? And I didn't have to think. I would just notice, oh, another negative thought came in. What am I grateful for? Oh, that's right, my warm fuzzy socks. I love them so much, right? And just start noticing. What
Yeah.
else do you recommend?
Yeah. So, I mean, definitely the gratitude and affirmations. I would say once you can finally do those things, there's like the next level of each of them. So, I would say the next level of gratitude is truly meaning it when you say that you're grateful for whatever ugly, right? And not grateful for, I've got some sadistic things I'm grateful for with these people that I don't like, right? But like truly finding some gratitude in these things. And then beyond that, so beyond the affirmations, I would say self-compassion. And nobody wants to acknowledge it, but it's not the thing. It's usually not the thing. It's rarely the thing. It's all the things before the thing that had you in the mindset and the state and the place that took you to, the bottom, right? And, or maybe the habits that had you in a position to make a FOMO leap into a deal or a partnership or an investment. And so just kind of unpacking truly the childhood that sounds, for me, I was quick and easy to say I had everything I needed and I did, but what I wasn't acknowledging was all of the other things, right? And so I think unpacking childhood is really important, and there's an exercise people can do um to do that, and it's called a genogram, and it's basically your family tree. And what you do is you start from your paternal grandmother and grandfather, and you move to your maternal grandmother and grandfather. You go down, then you've got your mother and your father and your mother and their siblings. You go down, and it's you and your siblings. You go down and you look at your children. And what you do is you dissect gifts and traumas. And we might as well start with the gifts because, man, you'll spend a lot of time on the traumas. So, so knowing these things about ourselves, it can be an exercise. And so you can look, hey, my there's service that's passed down in my family. I can see hard work that's passed down in my
Mhm.
family. I can see um divorce and some things. Right now we'll get into these traumas, and I can see the in things that you don't necessarily think of as a trauma, but then when you realize my grandma was a, a product of I she didn't graduate from high school and was a nurse and was a child of 8 and was a farm kid and got a divorce. And this woman was born in like the 1917. Like, women don't get divorced back then. That's kind of right.
Yes, my grandma
So,
got divorced in the 30s. She was
yeah,
shunned. She had to leave the state and go to another state. She had to move to LA.
yeah,
And she
there you
almost starved
go.
to death during the Depression with a single mom in the 30s during the Depression.
Exactly. Yep. My grandma's
No
a
one
divorce
talks about
era.
this.
They don't. And so once you realize, oh, hyper independence, weird. My
Mhm.
grandma's hyper independent. My mom was hyper independent. I'm hyper independent. I'm also a middle child of 7. I also got kicked in the face by a horse when I was 3 because we were feral farm animals that were not supervised because I had a working mom and a working dad. And like, so, you just look at these things and not to blame,
Mhm.
not to live in a pity party. You're not even doing this for 5 minutes of pity. You're doing this to understand. And so I would say that's like a pretty powerful exercise that you have to do multiple times. That the first time for me, it was just a big indicator of what I didn't know. I was like, I don't know anything about these people. Like they passed when I was young and, but taking time, thinking about it, talking to people, maybe doing some, I don't know, those DNA companies always kind of freak me out, but,
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah. I'm not a big fan of that. I
but
don't know what
yeah,
they're doing with it, but still, but I understand what you're saying. Just
yeah,
get to know thyself. Like what I feel like all this stuff is passed on generationally and just know where you come from
yeah,
because I think it's really important to know who you are. Like, and where do some of these tendencies come from, right? Just to
yeah.
understand who you are. And then I look at it because I'm now a grandma, right? And I see my grandkids and I watch my daughters parenting so differently than me. Like, hallelujah, too, for that. Because, like, man, my claim to fame with none of my kids, they all survived. I didn't kill any of them, right? Like, I was a stressed out mom, like today I'm so centered and I watch my daughter just being like she made me take she not made me, but she encouraged me to take this parenting class that she had signed up for and she paid for a buddy to do it too. And I took it and I was like, wow, like it was mind blowing. I'm like, what a better approach to parenting, right?
Yeah, what I wish I knew, right?
hmm So I'm implementing that though as a grandma, right? Instead of saying be careful, I'm like, trust your body, right? Like, isn't that better instead of
Yeah.
making them paranoid and living small? Like, my granddaughter yesterday, she's only 3. She was on the top of this huge thing at the park. I mean, huge. And there's no slats because it's for the older kids, right? And this lady's like, did you see where your granddaughter is? I said, oh, yeah, she's trusting her body. But that lady was freaked. Like, that she was thinking I was a bad grandma, right?
Support precedes action.
Yeah, I'm like, she's got it. And literally, she went down the slide. She was so excited. But that lady, because she climbed all the way up there, that lady's like, do you see where your granddaughter is? I'm like, yeah, she's got it.
Yeah. Cute.
But I
I
would have
love
been
that.
like freaked out when they were, if that was my kid up there, I'd be like, what are you doing? Be careful. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. My whole childhood, I was in the ER for one thing or 5 others. Worked out. I'm fine.
You're fine, right?
Just unpacking some things now. I'm like, oh, that explains a lot. Okay.
Right. And then after somebody unpacks all their crap, right? And I'm telling you, this isn't like a one and done thing, you guys. Like literally, even the grief thing, like at Squad Up Summit, I saw these two sisters that were together at the event. I just started crying because my sister died of cancer 10 years ago. And literally, I let myself experience that moment, right? Like I was sad. Like my sister and I will never experience that. I only have one sibling, right? So I don't have that shared memory. Do you know what I'm saying? Like that person that you can just go, do something fun with that had your same crazy childhood, right? She's already gone.
And it creates that appreciation for the relationships you do have in hindsight because you look at it and you're like, I don't have that. I hope you appreciate that. And I can't make you appreciate anything. So I'm going to make sure to appreciate what I've got and who I've got right now. And so, yeah, I mean, the post-traumatic growth domains are your appreciation for life, personal strength, spiritual and existential change, gratitude, right? And so there's all these things that can come from it if you choose to see them, if you choose to dig, and you have to dig because the negatives are so easily identifiable. But yeah, the grief comes in waves and it hits you when you don't even think it would. I'm sure it was like, oh, well, this is a surprise. I had a wonderful conversation with somebody. So I was doing I'm doing a yoga certification right now, which I was actually originally doing to serve the first responders that I do that PTG training for, but I've transitioned. And
Hmm.
so I was already in the certification. I was like, I'll do it anyway. But um, I had a practicum during Squat Up Summit. So I had to run up to my room. I brought my yoga mat and my blocks and stuff. Mind you, I'm a weightlifter and soccer player, not a yogi. I'm a stretchy. And so I'm transitioning to this yogi phase, but I run up, I'm down in the lobby having a wonderful conversation. And like you, something I didn't expect to come up. We were just talking about, spouses and whatnot. And there was a comment about somebody who had a Marine husband, or whose husband's a Marine, and they didn't move. And I was like, oh, you got the good years. They were like, yeah, until the PTS, right? I was like, oh, hi, I'm a jerk. Of all people. So we had this wonderful conversation. I'm like immediately like
Yeah,
getting
that's
into
right.
crying. And then I'm like, all right, I gotta go yoga. We'll talk about our traumas later. So yeah, these things that you don't expect to come up, but it allows you to connect deeper with yourself and others too, I guess, in those moments. But experience it, be in the present.
Yeah, it's really important because we don't have the past and we don't have the future yet, right? And the more we can just be now, it's so important. It's interesting that you said about the yoga certification. My daughter, if I hadn't had yoga, I haven't done yoga in a while, but I'm going to get back to that. Yoga saved my life. My daughter was a high school senior. She went to a high-end private school like Kobe Bryant's kids went there later, you know what I'm saying? But like, and so they could pick their physical education. So she did sailing, soccer, and yoga. And so the yoga studio is by our house. And the last year, I knew she was going to be going to college. And it sounds crazy, but I was going to miss her so crazy. I went to all her yoga classes. I didn't know anything about yoga. And the lady would be like, okay, your other left, Colleen, your other left. Because I'd be doing everything backwards. But I actually over time got really good and went like I was ended up going like 5, 6 days a week for like until that place closed down. Because later, after she left and everything, I ended up loving it because I didn't know that I was going to end up having all this trauma with my son. And it just really got me through a lot of years of his drug addiction because it was just so good for me, mind, body, and spirit. So I
Ah.
hope you enjoy your yoga.
Oh, I love it. I never expected to. I really didn't. And I was like, oh, this is just, it's integrating so much. I've done breath work, I've done meditation, and I love those two things. And I think they're really accessible tools to just grab when you need it. Breathing's free and controlling your breath is a choice, right? And you can control your mind and body with your breath. And so that's incredible. I've always really loved physical activity. I'm kind of a squirrely person. And so meditation was always hard for me, but once I learned how to do it, I found it to be incredibly powerful. And so, really, I see yoga as like a meditative movement that integrates breath work. And so, um, yeah, I've loved it so much. And I think, well, I've done yoga plenty of times.
Mhm.
I never really considered myself like a yogi or somebody who practiced regularly. And then I started I was voluntold to teach it for these programs. And I was like, well, that's weird. I wonder if this has anything to do with my organs because I'm not, I'm not healthy. And so I accepted that, I was voluntold, so it's not like I necessarily had a choice, but I accepted it and embraced it and kind of loved it. And then I was like, hey, can I get some training for this? I don't want to like injure people. And so now here I am going through this program and and I love it. So it was an accident, but I'm here for it. And I love to
Well,
hear that it saved your life. That's what a lot of my cohort says about their
mhm.
practice.
It saved my life. Like it was like my sanctuary.
Hmm.
That studio, I was really sad when it closed, but it was opened up a new era. I started paddleboarding in the ocean. So
Oh my goodness, you have to come to Monterey. My husband's
that's,
on, he's a outrigger canoe, get like, and so we can take you
does
out.
he have an outrigger OC1?
Oh yeah, he's got an OC1 and we can take it. So I I
I
happen
want
to
to learn
know
how to
that
do that. That's on my vision board for this year.
oh, it's
OC1.
because it's happening. You were actually visioning doing it with me. So yeah, we'll knock that out when you're out
I'm
here.
coming. You think I'm kidding? It's on my,
No, I don't.
I have three things on my vision board for this year because I'm really just focused, on just a few things instead of like all these things. And that's one of them, OC1. I couldn't find a picture of one, and so I just wrote it on there.
So in June, I already decided this, and that's why this all of this stuff is like pretty cool that it's kind of lining up because
Mhm,
you talk about your vision board, right? Like
mhm.
my thing is like I've decided, and I'm like I've decided I'm transitioning into like the resilient investor kind of phase of my business, um and so I've got the speaking gig lined up. I've got this training that I developed. I've decided I'm doing a workshop here in Monterey. And then I hear everybody's coming out to Monterey in June. And I was like, great, because I'm going to do a workshop. And it's mind, body, finance, and spirit. Um, and we'll do all of the post-traumatic growth like things, and then with it is you got to be on the ocean. You can't come out here and not do the ocean. And so anyway, we'll get you out in the outrigger. If if that's
Yes, I
cool.
love that. So people can come attend this event, right?
Yes, so capitalverified.com is where I will have like actual information posted once dates are decided. It'll be 3 days, 2 nights. Two of the days are like travel days if you're coming in and leaving, or if you're staying and there's events after. Then great, you got a little extra time to kind of bask in everything. But yeah, integrating some of the breath work, we will be across from the ocean, meals every day, and then just kind of like digging into the mission, vision, values, purpose, and passion of business instead of just taking action, making mistakes, and then wondering why you built a business you hate, right? Like,
Yeah, horrible.
yeah. So.
And you don't realize because people don't take time. They just like there's so much urgency, and we don't know how much time we have, but you do have time to put a little thought and effort into it instead of just like, oh, I'm going to wholesale, or oh, I'm going to do RV parks, or I'm going to do multifamily, or I'm going to fix and flip, or whatever. Take a moment.
Yeah, everything doesn't have to be a reaction. You can take a
Hmm.
pause and you can respond, right? You can check in with
Hmm.
yourself. You can check in with, your values, your whatever you believe, right? Your God.
Hmm.
And maybe make an informed decision instead of a
Yeah.
reactive decision.
Oh my gosh.
Colleen, this
So
was so fun. Thank you so much for inviting me.
yeah, thank you. And so people can find you on, say your website one more time, please.
Capitalverified.com. And then you can
Mm.
find me on Instagram at melpalmer.me. I'm primarily active on Instagram. Um, yeah.
Well, thank you, gorgeous. I just adore you. I always loved your energy. So thanks for being on here. And I can't wait to see you in Monterey. It's going to be great. And we can go OC1. That's so funny
OC1,
that
baby.
no one knows what an OC1 is usually when I talk about that.
Yeah, I don't have a paddleboard anymore, but I paddleboarded when I lived out in Hawaii. So get you
Yeah,
out
it's
here
good.
on the
Well,
paddleboard.
thank you, gorgeous friend. Thank you. You're the best.
Thank you.